Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Making It Personal is provided by Sarah Vocations Ministry. Learn more at joinserra.org.
Making It Personal with Bishop William Joensen on Iowa Catholic Radio and iowacatholicradio.com.
Welcome to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen. I'm Jean Till, and on today's show, we're visiting with Carrie Gress, author of The End of Woman, How Smashing the Patriarch Has Destroyed Us. And I think it is so appropriate that we have Carrie joining us during the month of August as we're celebrating the Feast of Mary, the Assumption, the Queenship of Mary, and so many wonderful female saints. I mean, we have Benedicta of the Cross, and Claire, and Rose of Lima, Jane Frances de Chantal, but sometimes she goes by Jean spelled my way.
There you go.
So I'm taking that
Jean.
one. And Monica, I mean, it's a blessing, I think. The timing is
such
perfect.
Unique profiles, but each manifesting God's incredible presence and goodness and love and strength. That resolve that's there in a beautiful way. So here we are. We're grateful again to our Sarans who support us in this show, and to our Spirit Catholic Radio listeners who've kind of found us. Migrating from Fridays to Saturday later in the afternoon, and the change that will be happening there. I was kind of wondering if I should be. Even maybe coming up with some opportunities for Nebraska football commentary, post-game things that if we're in that late afternoon slot, that will continue to boost our listenership. But we'll be who we are here as we make it personal. And, with Carrie Gress coming up, talking about this whole unfolding knit thread of feminism that extends back centuries and kind of locating us, helping us get our bearings, if we will. But before we do that, the sense tomorrow, the second annual Bishop Celebration of Education, this core of our mission, our parochial schools throughout the diocese, our 16 schools, and honoring those, recognizing, and I think drawing inspiration. So this year, the site has migrated to St. Francis of Assisi in West Des Moines, and we'll be giving special recognition to Misty Haid of St. Luke's School in Ankeny, Administrator of the Year, her 17 years of service with the Diocese of Des Moines. And then 45 years of service to Anne Levine as a Teacher of the Year at St. Malachi School in Creston. Way to go, Anne. I've been seeing her, and she's a Trojan of a woman in so many ways. Katie Fitzgerald of St. Anthony's School, the Volunteer of the Year. And,
wonderful, Katie.
Just a wonderful job in so many ways, the home and school president and beyond. And then our honorary chair, Tom Chapman of the Iowa Catholic Conference, familiar to our listeners, his yeoman's work with the Iowa Catholic Conference and the collaboration that we might have as well as the Kramer Foundation. And a special treat for folks, and again, tickets unfortunately are largely sold out.
I was going to say, they're gone, I'm sure.
They'll be there, but the special presenter and speaker will be with us. Some of the Clark family, kind of a name that's being bandied about in our state a little bit, but it's Ann Neasy Clark, Caitlin's mom, graduate of Dowling Catholic and her own star days at St. Pius as well. But she'll be representing what the whole sense of where parochial education in her life and how it's now being passed on through her children and continuing to give witness in that powerful way. So she, and then, of course, her husband, Brent, the children, Blake and Caitlin. I don't know. Iowa State and Iowa there. I hope there'll be a comedy prevailing.
Maybe they have to sit at separate tables.
And Colin, who opted to go across the river to Creighton University. So I think that way. But the panel discussion should be fascinating. And, who else can say that she's got a butter statue of herself at the Iowa State? I don't have a butter cow after butter statue, right? You don't. No, we're going to have to work on that. Something tells me she doesn't consume a lot of butter, but in that way. But just kind of run up to Carrie Gress and Jean, congratulations to you and John, by the way, on your second wedding anniversary this month as well. But, this was something that was in the water as you were a young woman growing up, the whole feminist thing.
The whole feminist thing,
in a kind of a surreptitious way.
Well, it is. It's one of those things. It's like, oh, you're 18 and you're starting to work, going to school, and you're like, I think I should have equal pay for equal work. I guess I'm a feminist. I'm going to wear that little badge. And then you kind of read things. Oh, yeah, okay. Husbands should take care of things at home too. They, and it's like 20 years, and you're like all of a sudden thinking, I'm not a feminist. I don't fall into all of those buckets because it really been co-opted and taken on so many other meanings that were beyond where I was at. Yeah. And
I think that's what Carrie Gress is going to peel back, some of those layers of how this is kind of a stealth agenda by some.
Yeah. Hey, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll visit with Carrie Gress, author of The End of Woman, How Smashing the Patriarch Has Destroyed Us. You're listening to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen on Iowa Catholic Radio and the Spirit Catholic Radio Network.
Each fall, Intervisions Healthcare hosts a fantastic evening of food and fun with the local Knights of Columbus. Join us as we dance the night away on Saturday, September 16th at Christ the King on the south side of Des Moines. All the proceeds from the catered dinner and auctions benefit the life-affirming work the nursing staff provides to women with unplanned pregnancies. For more information, visit ivhcare.org or give us a call today. We look forward to seeing you on September 16th as we dance for life at Christ the King in Des Moines.
Thank you, Intervisions Healthcare, for your support of Iowa Catholic Radio.
Support for programming provided by Trappist Caskets, a work of the monks of New Melleray Abbey in Peosta, Iowa. Embracing an honest approach to death can more readily affirm the real meaning of life. Trappist caskets and urns are made in the prayerful environment of the monastery using Iowa-grown wood from the Abbey's sustainable forest. Each casket and urn is blessed by a monk. Quietly laboring with their hands for 175 years, the monks offer workmanship at the pinnacle of woodworker's craft. Available for immediate delivery or as a part of a pre-planning program. Learn more at TrappistCaskets.com.
Welcome back to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen. And on today's show, we're visiting with Carrie Gress, author, The End of Woman, How Smashing the Patriarch Has Destroyed Us.
So, Ms. Gress, I'll call you Carrie because we do have a connection, and you've been on the show before, so I hope that's acceptable to you. But I really appreciate you taking time amidst your various vocations and things that you're about. Impressive to me always, and I always, as people are writers and are creating scholarly work, you're a prolific author, both in print and online. And I went to your acknowledgments page, as I was fortunate to read the book. You talk about the process of writing as sculpting water. What a marvelous metaphor. And then thanked your husband and your 5 children. Could you just give us a little glimpse on this Making It Personal show, your own writing discipline, how you can find time to do the research and compose books? This is, I believe, your 10th book.
Yeah, it is. Well, thanks so much for having me. I think I've heard that expression, sculpting water, when I first was working on my dissertation, and that really felt like sculpting water. But each one hereafter obviously takes on its own life. But I really learned the discipline of writing when I was a reporter in Rome, when I was covering Pope Benedict's pontificate for a couple of years with Zenit back in the day. And I think that just really taught me how to just hunker down and focus and just crank stuff out. And I think without that job, I probably never would have done any of this. But I think motherhood has also really pushed me into being more disciplined. And, I found early that when I had small children, it was actually really great to be able to spend the day kind of, as I was mindlessly going through the day, doing laundry and dishes and all the things that you do when you have small children.
Not totally mindlessly, but
Well, a lot of it is. There's a fair amount. Well, at least I could think about other things while I was doing that. I think most of my best ideas have come from either being at my kitchen sink washing dishes or on my treadmill of all places. But in any event, and then at night I would always have this time carved out to work once everybody went to bed. And so that's really worked pretty well for me. It's gotten a little bit harder now that I have teenagers because they're up later and, I like spending time with them and all of that. So it takes a lot more discipline. And when I decided to write this book last summer, it was one of those things where everything had to change. In fact, my husband took over all of our meat dinners, and he got home from work, and I just sat down for several hours, until it was time for the family rosary, and just did as much as I could. So it was really an all-out effort, and, my children kept saying, when are you going to be done? When are you going to be done? And that obviously is a big draw when, they're uncomfortable with just the amount of time I was spending doing it. But thankfully, we all got through it, and it's finished, and obviously now out on bookshelves.
No, so kind of giving birth, if you will, that metaphor. But it's not a book for just casual reading in a way, even though you make it very accessible. But an impressive spanning of both popular culture, but really digging deeply back into some of the threads, going back even into the 18th century that draws here. And I must say for myself, unfolding new figures and personalities that I had never encountered before, and yet how influential they've been. And yet you also kind of draw things together in a way that I think will capture the popular imagination in a way. I mean, one of the people, you draw an interesting connection between Meghan Markle, wife of Prince Harry, and then what you'll call the first feminist, Mary Wollstonecraft. Why should we know about Mary Wollstonecraft? And please unpack this connection that you present to us early on.
Well, I think, one of the goals of this book was to make it really readable for anybody, that anybody could pick it up and be pulled into it instead of feeling like it was too full of academic language or just inaccessible because it was so heavy. Because that's been one of my criticisms of a lot of the work that's been done on women over the maybe past 40 years, is that a lot of it's just too heady for people to even want to bother with. So that was really.
And you do mention one point that a lot of feminist literature is rather opaque and kind of hard to really get a coherent thread. But I interrupt. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No. I think that's a really important point as well. But Wollstonecraft is considered the godmother of feminism, and she's writing around the time of the French Revolution. And her story is really interesting because she seemingly was so revolutionary, and but she also was this incredibly broken woman. Her parents were just these horrible people, and which I show in the book. All this drama, all these early feminists. There's so much brokenness among these women that the argument is they probably shouldn't be the ones that have made the public policy that we're now operating with. When you have that much brokenness and anger and rage and whatnot. But she's also writing around the time of the French Revolution, where there's really this effort by Thomas Paine and so many who are just trying to tear down all these structures of civilization. And so she sort of weighs in her own right on women. She'd already written a book about men that was sort of on the coattails of Thomas Paine's work. The Rights of Man, she writes The Vindication of the Rights of Man, and then she writes The Vindication of the Rights of Woman. And in that, she makes it very explicit that she thinks we need to tear down any hierarchy that has been set up by men. So the church needs to be pulled down, as does the military, and that really, in many respects, sort of starts off the whole movement and ends up becomes this smashing the patriarchy idea, which, of course, you can know, having read the book, that evolves and changes in many different ways. It's affected by Marxism. It morphs in so many different ways throughout the centuries. But in any event, she was really the match, thrown onto this pile of ideas, and then it was subsequent people after her that took a lot of her ideas, and some of the things that she said made a lot of good sense, but a lot of them were really disordered and weren't ultimately going to be good for women anyway. So that was the start, and then things really start heating up with her son-in-law, whom she never met. She died in childbirth, delivering Mary Godwin Shelley, later Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein, and Mary Shelley's husband, Percy Bysshe Shelley, who is the poet, is the one that really took a lot of both Mary Wollstonecraft's ideas as well as Mary Wollstonecraft's husband, William Godwin, his ideas, and put them together in his poetry and created characters and developed ideas that became a part of what he called the women's revolution. So the feminist movement really, in essence, was articulated best, in the first place by Percy Shelley, and which is, of course, ironic. Like, why is a man describing this? Mm-hmm. But the three things that he really was involved in and very interested in were the occult. He's very involved in the occult. Free love, and this idea of marriage as slavery and trying to destroy the nuclear family. All of that came actually from his father-in-law, William Godwin. That's what he was known for. And then this idea of restructuring society so that men and women are equal. There's no more hierarchies, that kind of thing. So anyway, fast forward, of course, 200 years, and Meghan Markle enters the scene, and you can see that this is a woman who clearly has, open disdain for the family into which she's married into, but by large part because she doesn't respect any kind of hierarchy. She wants to see that collapse down. It was one of the Oprah interviews. She's complaining because she had to curtsy to the Queen. It's just mind-boggling. In addition to just all the undermining that has been done, across the pond once they moved to California. So anyway, it was just an interesting way to sort of tie it in and help people to see, like, these ideas may seem very old, but we're still living with the ramifications of them in a very direct way in our daily lives.
Yeah. Well, wow. And just one response, you've given us so much already. And, I think that sense, you fast forward and, the Shelleys and Percy Shelley, who was no friend of women, right? He was really a cad and a scoundrel, right? In terms of his own, how he treated women. Yeah. The kind of, exploiting them in so many ways. But the role of art in all of this, and that was woven to an art untethered from any sense of, any of the transcendentals of good, truth, and beauty in any way, but becomes enlisted too. And of course, then the mantra of science, and you mentioned the exaltation of the satanic. That's a potent cocktail for people, but no benefit to women or men in that way.
No, absolutely, and I think that's one of the things about Shelley that's fascinating. Is just there's this there's graves all over Europe, really, from his children or women he seduced or his ex-wives, or it's just amazing when you start reading about how awful he was and why he lived abroad so much was because he just was not acceptable. So, nobody wanted him in English society because he was such an awful man. It's amazing to see just how much came from him, and even to see, you might say, well, it just sort of stayed there. Well, it didn't. He created this model for women to follow. One of them was this woman, Sitna, that he created. While Mary Shelley's writing about Frankenstein, he's creating this first independent woman who's not connected to her husband or her children, but she's connected to Satan. And that gets picked up by later, early feminists, but also Elizabeth Cady Stanton was hugely influenced by a lot of the ideas that came from Shelley. And, of course, Susan B. Anthony followed because Susan B. Anthony really was more of a mouthpiece than the brain behind the combo. Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony are usually seen together as a team, and that's why Cady Stanton came with the ideas but was home with their children. So Susan B. Anthony, who was single, was the one that was able to speak about them. But, they were very much involved in seances and the occult and, all kinds of things that don't make it into the, tidy history of the feminist movement.
Well, and here we are 2 weeks on the heels of the Feast of the Assumption and, the mention of the new Eve, Revelation, and all that, the woman who kind of brings us the liberation of her son. But there was an appropriation and a recasting of the whole story of Genesis and the fall, right? That Eve becomes a new totem, if you will.
Yeah, no, and I think that's an amazing point. That was one of the things that Shelley did. He took the works of Milton and really turned them on their head and said, Eve, and we've seen that, Eve was framed, those bumper stickers that we see today. And it's that idea that, Eve wasn't really, she didn't do anything bad. She actually did something good. The serpent provided an opportunity for her to gain a new kind of knowledge. And that really was one of the, you can see how important it was for them to go all the way back to the beginning and recast the whole Bible, really, in a new light so that it could then be twisted in the ways in which they wanted to manipulate it.
So you alluded to Susan B. Anthony, also the role played by Elizabeth Cady Stanton in that. So we've kind of crossed the ocean here back to our shores. And this whole movement of spiritualism, which, hey, that sounds attractive. I'm spiritual but not religious. Who can, cast aspersions on that? But how is that even a kind of, we might say, and Pope Francis speaks of Gnosticism, a Gnostic tendency that leads to this kind of libertarian view of what we are and what we're about, including in the realm of human sexuality?
Yeah, I think, this was a fascinating piece because, again, we think of the 1800s as some sort of Victorian, pristine era, and diving into this just blew all the lids off of that idea for me. It's this great awakening is happening in the United States, and a lot of it is connected with these revivals, but these revivals have a lot of mediums and seances and all kinds of other added activities going on at them. And you have to remember, like you mentioned before, science is this new thing that everybody's just, no pun intended, but they're electrified by. It's got the telegraph is happening, and people are connecting with people on a material level in ways that they never dreamed possible. But you also have this happening in seances, and you've got all these children who are dying early. The mortality rates of children are terrible. You also have the Civil War just happened, so husbands and brothers and sons have just died, and people are just starving. Spiritually, they don't have the wherewithal to know that they shouldn't be dabbling in this, but they're starving to connect with the dead, and they sort of see this parallel between what's happening with science on Earth and connecting that with the spiritual realm. And so it just took off, and there was this whole movement that Katie Stanton was just involved in almost from the very beginning, where there were these tables where the spirits would knock on them, and that's how they would sort of get the answers to the questions that they had. And that table, actually, one of the tables is where Katie Stanton says she got the idea for the Seneca Falls Convention. Well, that table is now in the Smithsonian. It's just, it's this piece of history, American history. But it was a seance table for Katie Stanton and all the women that were helping her involved in the suffrage movement at that point. So, yeah, there's all kinds of really dark corners, and in the book there's huge scandals that just rock Katie Stanton and Susan B. Anthony that actually set the suffrage movement back, by decades, largely because, they did so many awful things that they got kicked out of their own organization. And, it's hard to chronicle, or it's hard to encapsulate these stories in something short. And that was really the challenge of even putting it in the book, was trying to cover just how bad things were. And, again, we don't hear about this. We sort of have this sense that she was this lovely, wise woman. And, we don't get the ugly underbelly of seances and anti-Christian rhetoric and racism and, all these other pieces that are just kind of left off the biography.
So even without a marketing agent, kind of that public profile has been sanitized for our protection in the United States,
completely.
In this way. So we're fast coming up on a break here, how fast the time goes as well. But you make reference to another familiar figure, Michael Phelps, and kind of bring that in. So we'll leave that as a tease here as we take a little pause and then come back.
To learn more about Carrie Gress and her book, The End of Woman, How Smashing the Patriarch Has Destroyed Us, go online to this website, regnery.com. You're listening to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen on Iowa Catholic Radio and the Spirit Catholic Radio Network.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by the Sarah Vocations Ministry, including the St. Sarah Club of Des Moines and the Sarah Club of Council Bluffs. Sarah is an apostolate of the Worldwide Catholic Church dedicated to fostering and supporting priesthood and religious vocations. Sarahs strive to accomplish their mission through prayer, fellowship, and service to the bishop, priests, sisters, and all in religious formation, and in doing so to increase their own holiness. Learn more at joinsarah.org, joinserra.org. Thank you, Sarans, for your support of Iowa Catholic Radio.
Each fall, InterVisions Healthcare hosts a fantastic evening of food and fun with the local Knights of Columbus. Join us as we dance the night away on Saturday, September 16th at Christ the King on the south side of Des Moines. All the proceeds from the catered dinner and auctions benefit the life-affirming work the nursing staff provides to women with unplanned pregnancies. For more information, visit ivhcare.org or give us a call today. We look forward to seeing you on September 16th as we dance for life at Christ the King in Des Moines.
Thank you, InterVisions Healthcare, for your support of Iowa Catholic Radio.
Welcome back to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen.
Thank you, Carrie, for remaining with us. And we mentioned Michael Phelps. Maybe we'll talk about him briefly in a moment in terms of that overall sense. You quote Thomas Hull's comment, "It's so easy to be wrong and to persist in being wrong when the costs of being wrong are paid by others." What are some of these costs of the denial of femininity in the name of art, politics, or power? And, are men complicit in this dynamics of envy and kind of denying even male-female distinctions? Just for a light question.
Yeah, exactly. You have 30 seconds. Go.
Yeah.
No, I think, the greatest cost I'm seeing right now are these 4 young girls who are transitioning into, being told that they can become boys. Because this, what we've really seen with the feminist movement is this idealization of the masculine and trying to make women like men. That's actually the question that Mary Wollstonecraft and others were asking from the beginning. How do we make women like men? Because they saw that fertility was really our weakness. That was what made our lives miserable in their estimation. So we had to sort of find ways to get rid of or manage our fertility. And, of course, we just see this in spades in the culture today. But as a result, we haven't said a single good thing about being a woman in 50 years. So, of course, these little girls who, are dying for attention, they want something. They've been told, the woman's body there's a lot to adjust to as you grow into a woman's body, and they've been told that they can escape all of that and step out of it, and that this is where they're going to find acceptance, and this is what we're seeing in the real tragedy of it. So the trans movement is really the culmination of what the feminist movement has been about, and we see this in the 70s. I mean, they made it very explicit that they were trying to get rid of gender altogether. So that's, I think, been where the cost is being paid. It's also being paid in families, just with the destruction of the family unit, the nuclear family, all of those kinds of things. So I think that, trying to tack in the question of are men complicit, I think actually feminism has been sort of like kryptonite with men. Like you mentioned feminism, and I've seen this happen over and over again because I can say I write about feminism, and all you have to do is just see immediately men shut down. Like nobody wants to touch that. It's a taboo topic because they know they cannot win if they're going to talk about it. And so I in this book, I really tried to
because it's a paradox. If you as a man try to speak to this, then you're reverting back to the patriarchy. You have no authority. The patriarchy has been dismantled, and who are you to claim a voice in any of this? So. Yeah.
Exactly. So men need to submit is really the idea. I mean, just this amazing, we want to be like you, but we don't want you to be like us, and we certainly don't want you to have an opinion about it. That's kind of this weird relationship that we've established between men and women, and the wedge just keeps getting deeper and deeper and deeper. And even the Barbie movie just highlighted this so perfectly, like that. For anyone who's seen it, everything goes awry when the men are in charge. And, of course, the women come back in and bring strict order to everything. And not a single man is necessary in the whole movie. They're all just idiots or, useless.
I'll scratch that off my list. I'll go to Oppenheimer instead.
Yeah. I'm surprised you haven't seen it already.
So we have about a minute left, Carrie, and I just want to, you relate that your daughter once asked you, what is better about being a girl than a boy? And that kind of leads to your final graceful chapter. We think about St. John Paul II and speaking of feminine genius. That's not a point of condescension, but what is it? And we really have only very few seconds. So
okay, so it goes deeper. I mean, I think we have to start looking back at our bodies and realize that our arms are made differently than men's arms to carry a child. Our body is a first home for a child. We nourish a child with our bodies. All these kinds of things that we've been told we have to disconnect because we're not supposed to look to our bodies for answers. They really reflect on what the soul does. And I think this is an exciting area for us to start looking at, especially as Catholics, because we have so much richness to dig into from spiritual womanhood, spiritual motherhood, as well as the great saints, to be able to start re-articulating in a new grammar. What does it mean to be a woman? So that we can answer this question instead of leaving our girls feeling like, well, to be the best woman is actually be a man, or the best woman is a man. So I think that's the exciting thing is we have the resources. It's just a matter of really putting them out there in ways that women are wanting to absorb.
Amen, Carrie. Amen. And in a month of saints, you've given us much to reflect on, and so thank you because you are providing, I think, a sense of a touch base and a reference for many today that many will find sympathetic. So blessings on you and your work and your vocation.
Well, this has been another edition of Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen. Thanks to all of our listeners in Iowa, Nebraska, Wisconsin. You're listening to Iowa Catholic Radio and the Spirit Catholic Radio Network.
You can hear Making It Personal with Bishop William Joensen every week on Iowa Catholic Radio and iowacatholicradio.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Making It Personal is provided by Sarah Vocations Ministry. Learn more at joinserra.org.